Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Ryan. I serve as our group's Dungeon Master, and today I wanted to break down what is Session 0 in Dungeons & Dragons. You may hear this term Session 0 thrown around from time to time. It's not a mandatory session, but I personally think that it has a ton of value as a great resource to do before you get started on your campaign. Gets everybody on the same page. So today I'm going to walk you through a Session 0 and all of the things that you should be doing during that session. Let's get started. Okay, so first up, what is Session 0? Session 0 is a term more or less used to refer to a group meeting that you have before your first actual play session in your new campaign of Dungeons & Dragons. Who all is in attendance normally? Well, ideally you would want everyone who's playing in the campaign, and you would definitely want your Dungeon Master to be present. The goal of Session 0 is just to get everybody on the same page so you can hit the ground running with your first actual play session without having to spend time asking lots of questions or trying to understand the foundation of this new campaign. This is all about laying the groundwork ahead of time. It's the nitty-gritty stuff. So now that you know what it is, let's talk about what you're going to be doing. There are several goals that we want to accomplish during Session 0, and they are as follows. We want to establish the broad setting of our campaign. We want to come to a player consensus about our classes that we're going to be playing. We need to establish our party's backstory. We need to agree upon the rules of play for this campaign, and we need to share any resources needed for play. So let's tackle these one at a time. Starting with establishing the broad setting of your campaign, your DM's probably going to want to keep most of the details close to the chest. They don't want to spoil any story beats for you, but they are probably going to want to make you aware of where you're going to be playing in terms of what continent, what world, what plane of existence are you going to be in? What pantheon of gods exists in this world? Because that's going to matter if you're like deciding that you're going to play as a cleric and you serve a certain deity, and then you get to your first game session and then you realize your DM's like, that god doesn't exist here, so you're going to need to pick a new pantheon, a new god that you're going to be serving. And so that could throw off your whole backstory. It can throw a lot of stuff, even the names of your spells. Some of them are named after the gods that they correlate to. So obviously you're going to want to know what world you're playing in, what continent, what pantheon is represented there. Your DM may even choose to tell you the city that you're going to be starting in. And sometimes they will choose not to do that just for story purposes, but otherwise they might tell you ahead of time just so you can read up on that city, so you're familiar with sort of the lore and the background and the general vibe of that location, whether it's in Faerun or somewhere else. And the benefits of doing that is, I can tell you as a DM, a lot of times when you start your first play session, you could start it with a huge lore dump where you're like, this is where your party finds yourselves right now. This is the city of Innerlith. It's on the eastern coast of the Lake of Steam, and it has a sulfuric smell in the air. And so you have to sort of go through this whole monologue, and then your players who were excited about showing up and playing D&D end up spending the first 20 minutes just listening to you talk about the setting and the location, and that can be a little bit of a drag. So they may choose to let you know in advance so they don't have to do this lore dump on you at the first session. You can just get going with the main beats of the story. Giving you a frame of reference for the setting is a great way to help players think about their backstories, because some of that could inform their backstories. If you were, for example, to say, we're going to be kicking things off in the city of Waterdeep, then you might actually choose as a player, well, wouldn't it make sense then? I'm going to have my character, their backstory is going to be that they grew up with magical training at the school there in Waterdeep, but they're feeling too confined. They can't wait to get out there and do some adventuring, and so they run away from the school and they join this adventuring party. And it can help inform the decisions that your players are going to make about their backstory, where they're coming from, and why they might end up in that particular city. Let's move on to the second goal, which is come to a consensus about the classes that we're going to be playing. This is really important because your players, you don't want them double dipping. You don't want your group to come to the table for your first session and you've got 2 healers and you don't have a single tank character. You just have ranged people and healers. It's not a very well balanced party. So you're going to want to have a chat ahead of time during your Session 0 with one another and kind of come to a consensus. Okay, well, let's make sure we've got all of our bases covered. I was thinking about doing a healer, but I wouldn't mind doing a ranged, like a ranger as well. And someone else might say, well, I was really set on doing a healer. I've never played one before. And then you might say, okay, well, that's fine. Now I know. I'll do a ranger instead. And so you're kind of coming to a consensus about the ways that you're going to play. You want to be a well-rounded party with a diversified set of skills, because that way, if you encounter encounter obstacles during your campaign, you want to have someone who can pick locks. You might want to have someone who can break down a door if they need to. You're going to want to have someone who can smooth talk their way through a situation. You might want to have somebody who's intimidating and can force people to do what they want based on their physical prowess. Another thing about this that's really nice to do together is actually filling out your character sheets, because filling out a character sheet, I have a full video breaking this down, by the way. If you're interested in doing that, you can check that out. But filling out a character sheet can be a time-consuming process. And a lot of times it's a lot faster if you do it as a group and you're sort of sharing your knowledge together, especially if your DM is there. They can walk you through those choices and let you know, okay, well, we're going to be using the standard array, so here's how we're going to allocate our ability scores. Here's what your proficiency bonus is. We're starting at level 5, so it's going to be this. We're starting at level 1, so it's just going to be +2. They'll walk you through all of that. What does that mean? How do I calculate my spell save DC? How do I calculate the damage I do with my greatsword? All of that stuff, they can help you walk through it. That way, it's not just numbers on a sheet, but you actually know where those numbers came from and why they are the way they are. Because understanding what made those values what they are will actually help you out with your leveling process, which we'll talk about in a minute. But as your character levels up, you're not going to know what to do or where to go or how those numbers might change because you didn't understand what informed those numbers to begin with. So filling out your character sheets together as a group is a great way to increase your overall understanding of the rules, how character progression works, and what these numbers mean. The last part about coming to this consensus as players about your party is going to look like, the last part of that that's really helpful is actually for your DM. Because I can tell you as a DM, a lot of times we tailor make encounters, we fudge with them, we change them up a little bit based on our knowledge about you, our players. And so a lot of times we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to be useful. So instead of having 3 locked doors in a row, we might say, well, this person is proficient with this other tool. How can we leverage that? This player, I saw them make their character sheet. I know that they're really good at card games as part of their background. How do I slip a mini game where they can really have a chance to shine at a table playing cards? Stuff like that. So we can actually make a better campaign, more tailor-made for you, the player, where you get to shine and leverage all of the things on your character sheet if we're a part of that process and we know ahead of time. Let's move on to goal number 3, establishing how your party came together. What's your backstory? So you're going to want to come up with an idea together as a group, workshop it, talk through it. You're going to want to share your own individual backstories, and then you're going to ask the question, well, then how did we all end up together in this one location? How did we meet? What did that process look like? Did any of you know each other ahead of time? Are you siblings? Are you cousins? Were you co-workers? Did you just all manage to just come together via happenstance? How did it happen? Having a good understanding about how that all came to be, how your party came to be, is really going to help inform your role play and the interactions you have with your fellow players, but not just them, but also NPCs who may be asking questions. One thing I've actually seen parties do before, which is really cool, I think, because it helps people kind of shake off their real world shame a little bit. Listen, we're being nerds. We're playing Dungeons and Dragons. You may as well embrace it. One thing that I've seen parties do is actually they chat about how they meet, but then once they've sort of got a broad understanding for it, they didn't act it out. They'll act out their group meeting together for the first time, having a conversation, deciding to form a party. And then when you actually start your campaign first session, you've got that framing in place. And you can even refer back to those encounters and help that infer the way that you carry out your relationships moving forward. It's also a great way to just step into your character, try on their clothes a little bit, and how do they talk? What are their mannerisms? Do they have an accent? What motivates them? And you kind of get to talk through it until you come to something that you think works well and feels right. That way, when you start playing, you've got a fleshed out character. Let's move on to goal number 4, establish the rules of play. So one thing I've learned is that not all DMs are the same. Some of them are going to want you to use the dice when you're filling out your character sheet and saying, we're not doing standard array. We're rolling the dice to see what your stat allocation is like. We're rolling the dice to see what your hit points are like. We're rolling the dice to decide what your background is. Some of them are like that, and they want everything to be random. Some of them are going to give you more control. Most of them will. But then beyond that, there's other things like character progression and leveling up. How does that work? You can ask your DM, hey, how are we handling leveling? And they will tell you probably one of two things. They could say, I'm going to be keeping track of every monster you kill and the experience point values for those kills, as well as other feats that you may accomplish as a party. And I will be awarding experience points to you, and then once you hit the thresholds, I'll let you know when you've leveled up. That's one thing that could happen. Other times, DMs will be like, for the sake of balancing out all of these encounters, it's a lot easier for me if I have decided at which intervals. This is called like the waypoint system, where you're going to hit a certain point in your campaign where your DM is going to say, congratulations, we finished session 2. You just finished this boss off. Everyone's going to level up now to level 2, level 3, whatever it may be. And so that way, when you step away from the table at the end of that session, in between then and your next session, your DM's just going to say, hey, make sure everybody goes through their leveling process in between now and the next time we game together, so that when you come back to the table, you're all leveled up and ready to go. And we don't have to take time out of the session to fill out our new information. DMs might also have house rules where they're going to say, listen, this is how I do things. I just think it works better if for this campaign we decide to ignore what the player handbook says about this one thing, and we'll do it a different way instead. So make sure you ask them any house rules, any deviations from the standard that we should know. That way, when that rule comes up in actual play, you're not blindsided by it. You're like, okay, we talked about that ahead of time. That makes sense. That will help you avoid instances where you might feel like the DM is being unfair or unkind. The last thing that you can do in session 0 is share resources. Usually this comes from the DM themselves. They might provide you with maps. They might provide you with cheat sheets for your character. They might provide you with combat tutorials or links to videos that they want you to watch ahead of time. All of those things can be really useful for preparation so that when you get to the table for your first play session, you don't have to waste a ton of time, like an hour, just getting started. You can just get started. One of the things we have to remember about Dungeons and Dragons is that it's not like most tabletop games. There's not like a set game board we're going to be using. There's not, like a box that we open up, we take the lid off, and we unfold all of these things, and everybody gets their sheets handed to them. It's not like that. We are sort of it's a game about freedom, and so because of that, we have to set up all of the groundwork ourselves as players, especially as a dungeon master too. So it just takes a little bit more investment up front, but once you get it all out of the way, man, this game can be super friggin' fun. Thank you so much for watching the video today. I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in. Polite reminder, this is a new channel for me. I have like a main gaming channel with over 300,000 subscribers, and we do gaming content over there all the time, but I wanted all of my D&D content to be separate from that and to have its own place for people who are interested in it. And so we're trying to get a lot of content up here that's just helpful tutorial stuff first. Then after that, I want to dive into editing full actual play sessions for a campaign I'm about to start with my friends. And I'd love to share that with everybody who's interested in watching. I'll record these sessions, edit them down, so there's no downtime, potty breaks, and stuff like that. But I also want to commission custom artwork so that if you're watching the videos or listening, you can have this artwork to refer to and understand these settings we're in, because they're all homebrewed. It's a world I created with bad guys I created and NPCs I created. So there's no visual aids out there right now. So when I'm talking about those things, you'll be like, I have no idea where this is or what that's about. So because of that, I'm very happy to receive any help you want to send to our Patreon account to help fund the artwork that we're going to do and commission for this campaign. That way we can improve your viewing experience. If you're interested in helping out with that, you can head on over to patreon.com/dramguard, which is the name of one of my other channels, because as you can tell, I also collect whiskey. So it's DRAMGUARD. If you type that into Patreon, boom, it'll show you my channel. I would put a link to it in the description, but I'm not allowed to, because this channel has not existed long enough for me to post links in it, and YouTube has a policy about links on channels that are young. They don't want bot accounts spamming links to people, which I totally understand. So otherwise, I would share the link for you if I could. Anyways, thank you so much for your support. Be warm and well fed, my friends, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.